Hello everyone, welcome to another Hero Cantare video. Today I'm just going to go over the Noblesse characters for Hero Cantare. I am making this video because a few of you guys did request me to make this video, so here it is. But before I actually start the video, I want to note a few things. First of all, I didn't read Noblesse, so if I do pronounce their names wrong, I do apologize in advance. And secondly, I do know that there are S tier units that are from Noblesse. There's also an A tier unit that's from Noblesse, but I'm not going to go over them today because I don't want to make this video too long. I'll make a separate video about those units in another video in the future, but for today, I'm just going to go over the SS tier units. But yeah, that's pretty much all I really wanted to say, and yeah, let's go ahead with the video. Alrighty, so starting off with Unsealed Rizel. I hope I'm saying that right because that's what it says in Korean. So let's go over his skills. So chain 1 attacks 2 enemies with 120% attack, spends 10% of his current HP. So it means whatever HP you have when you use this, so 10% from that. So if you have if your Rizel have a 70% HP, then you'll get a 10% HP from there, and then you're going to multiply that by 150% and deal extra damage to the enemies. So very nice. Chain 2 attacks all enemies with 105% attack and disables heals for enemies with 90% probability for 2 turns. So very nice. Spends 10% of his HP and deals extra 200% damage based on the amount of HP lost. So this character does kind of spends his HP and use that and multiply that by a certain amount and does extra damage on top of his original attack. I do think his chain 2 is the most useful skill he has, especially for advent bosses when they heal up. It does kind of get annoying, and he's probably going to be very useful for that. So chain 3 attacks all enemies with 120% attack and spends 15% of his current HP and deals extra 250% damage, provides absolute attack buff, which is damage reduction and status resist is ignored by 40% to all allies. So very nice as well. But I still think chain 2 is the most useful one, but chain 3 is also very useful as well. Passive 1, health is increased by 25%, defense is increased by 10%, damage reduction is increased by 15%. So very tanky passive skill there. And passive 2, if HP is below 25%, becomes invincible for 1 turn, and his HP is healed back up to 50% of his maximum HP. All enemies are damaged by 10% of Rizel's maximum HP, and all enemies' speed is reduced by 100 for 2 turns. So I don't know if this activates I don't know if this is like a one-time thing. I'm assuming it's not. I actually don't really know, because if we do look at the Korean translations, they don't really say if this is a one-time thing. So if this is a one-time thing, then that's fine as well. But if it isn't, if it's a thing that happens every time when his HP goes below 25%, then that's kind of broken. So EX spends 10% of his maximum HP and deals 150% damage to the enemy with the highest attack based on the HP lost. So very nice. This one, it is based on his maximum HP. And he increases all allies' attack except for himself by 50%. So 50%. So very, very nice. So yeah, this character does have a EX skill as well. And I do see this character pretty often in the Korean ranking system. People use him a lot. I don't really know about the other Noblesse characters, but I do definitely think this character is very, very useful when you do build his equipment around his HP, because that's kind of what he's used for. So yeah, that's Unsealed Rizel. Alrighty, next up we have Sera. Sera, she's a damage dealer and she's also a green affinity unit. She's definitely not my favorite unit, and we'll just go over that right now. So yeah, her chain 1 attacks 1 enemy with 140% of her attack and increases crit hit rate by 30% for 2 turns. The Korean description doesn't really tell me. It doesn't really tell me if this crit hit rate buff is applied for all allies or just for her. But since the S tier Yuri does say it applies for all allies, and this one doesn't, I'm assuming it's just for her. So It's fine. It's still okay. So chain 2 attacks one enemy with the highest HP by 210% of her attack. That's a lot of damage. And for 2 turns applies 2 bleed effects. If the enemy already has a bleed effect, deals extra 30% damage. So yeah, she does kind of rely on that bleed effect, and this will kind of be a constant thing for this character. Chain 3 attacks all enemies with 135% of her attack and reduces the incoming damage by 30%. If the enemy has a bleed effect, adds 2 more bleed effect to the enemy. So yeah, bleed effect, bleed effect. If you guys didn't know, for this character at least, when she applies a bleed effect to the enemy, that one bleed effect stack will deal 30% of her damage attack stat each turn. It depends on how long that sustained damage debuff will stay on the enemy, but it's useful if you do stack it, because I think there's no limit on those stacks. So yeah, that was her chain 3. Passive 1, attack is increased by 20%, HP is increased by 10%, and crit hit rate is increased by 15%. So pretty good for her, her damage, I guess. Passive 2, if she hits a crit, applies bleed effect to the enemy for 2 turns. If the enemy already has a bleed effect, she is provided with a absolute attack, which ignores damage reduction and status resistance by 30%. If you guys do remember, I'm sorry, I didn't read Noblesse. Ryzel had a 40% damage reduction, status resistance ignored by 40%. So it is different from each character, I think. I don't really know what Chloris does for the absolute attack, but I'm assuming it's similar to this. So yeah, if her HP is below 50%, damage immunity is applied for 1 attack. So I guess it's pretty good for her survivability. EX attacks one enemy with the highest attack by 180% attack, and applies 4 bleed effects to random enemies separately. So I word that really weirdly. Basically, she applies 4 bleed effects in total to random enemies and also random amounts. So one enemy can have 3, one enemy can have 2, things like that. It's really random, and I wouldn't rely on it too much. Damage immunity is applied for 1 attack for her EX skill as well. So yeah, she's okay. I mean, at least for the Korean server, people don't really use her much because for PvP, it is the fire affinity units meta, and they kind of destroy everything. So yeah, she's no go there. She may be useful for the Phoenix admin boss with those bleed effect stacks and her chain 2 skill, which does 210% damage. I guess that can be used, but again, there's better choices, honestly. So yeah, that was Sera. Alright, next up we have Lunak. She's definitely not a damage dealer. If we do look at her stats, she is definitely a tank. So yeah, let's just go over her skills. Chain 1 attacks one enemy with 110% of her attack, and for 2 turns, she gains a barrier based on 25% of her HP. So this doesn't really specify if, the Korean version description doesn't really specify if the barrier is based on her maximum HP or her current HP, but I'm assuming it's her current. It's fine. It's really nothing special. So chain 2 attacks one enemy in the front row and one enemy in the back row with 120% attack, and taunts them with a 60% probability. Taunt is always good, but I think there are better characters that actually does this. Like top of my head, I can think of Green April Yuri, Prime King Uma. I don't really know how Lee Sujin's taunt work. I don't really know how Urek Mazino's taunt work, but they're probably better. So yeah, chain 2 kind of disappointing, especially when most of the characters chain 2 is kind of their main point. So yeah, chain 3 deals 265% attack damage to one enemy with the highest attack, and deals extra damage by 60% of the damage dealt. So I guess, the number sounds a lot, like the percentage, like it sounds like a lot of damage, right? But her attack stat is pretty low, so it's kind of useless. Passive 1, I take that back. It's not useless, but there's better characters who use like multipliers that are less than that and just does more damage than whatever she can do. So it's just disappointing. So passive 1, HP is increased by 15%, defense is increased by 10%, and status accuracy is increased by 15%. So I guess she has a 75% chance to taunt the enemy, so I guess that's fine. Passive 2, increased defense by 20% when attacked. It goes up to 5 times max, so it's very similar to Prime King Uma. When hit with a critical damage, she decreases the damage output by 30%. So it means she decreases the crit damage by 30, decreases the crit damage she takes by 30%. So I guess that can be useful, I guess, but honestly, Prime King Uma is a better taunter and a better tank in my opinion. So yeah, Lunak is a bit disappointing in my opinion, but you know, that's just my opinion, and there you go. That was Lunak. Okay, next up we have Raskurea. Okay, I don't know that surname in Korean. I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong in English, but that is her name in Korean. Raskurea. Okay, so her chain skill 1. Her chain skill 1 deals 130% attack damage to the enemy with the highest attack. If the enemy has a sustained damage debuff, increases the debuff turn by 1 turn. So sustained damage debuff basically means like bleed effects, poison, or burn effects, like things like that does sustained damage over time, you know, things like that. So she basically increases the timer on that. So yeah, that's her chain 1, which can be kind of decent, I guess. Chain 2 deals 205% damage to one enemy with the highest attack and applies 2 bleed effects to the enemy with a 90% probability separately. I don't know why they did that, but there you go. Chain 3 deals 120% damage to all enemies and applies 5 bleed effects to random enemies. The less enemies there are in the battlefield, she deals extra damage up to 50%. So, I mean, I guess that's fine. A lot of these Noblesse characters does provide those bleed effects, but I guess it can be useful. The less enemies there are in the battlefield, she deals extra damage up to 50%. It's really nothing major, but I guess it's better than nothing. Passive 1, oh wait, actually, 130%. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit disappointing. Passive 1, attack is increased by 10%, HP is increased by 15%, and status accuracy is increased by 15%. So she basically has a guaranteed bleed effect to the enemy. Okay. What is the point of this, man? What is the point of this 90% probability? Whatever. Passive 2, if the enemy has a bleed effect applied, increases her attack by 10% up to 50%. And if the... Okay, I don't know why that says this. If the enemy has a debuff, deals extra 50% damage and heals back her HP based on the extra damage. Oh, okay, that's actually pretty nice. That's a better heal. Wait, heals extra 50%. Okay, I don't know. I don't know how much she heals. I mean, I do know how much she heals, but I'm assuming the amount she heals is worse than Prime King Uma. I mean, if she was better, then I'm assuming people would use her over Prime King. Actually, no. Prime King Uma and this character is a completely separate character, but I don't really see this character used that much in literally anything. So, I mean, yeah, I'm personally, I think she's kind of similar to Sera, so she's definitely not my favorite character, but it really depends. That's just my opinion. So yeah, that's Korea. I'm sorry. Lastly, we have clan leader Sera. So her chain 1, she deals 120% damage to 2 enemies and increases her own attack by 30%. So very nice. Chain 2 deals 115% damage to all enemies and deals extra 30% damage to 1 enemy with the highest attack and 1 enemy with the highest HP, and curse them for 2 turns with a 80% probability. So curse effect is basically a heal disable that deals damage. If you try to heal, you'll be unable to heal, and instead you'll be damaged by 20% of the healing that you try to do. So yeah, it's a very, very nice effect. Chain 3 deals 140% damage to all enemies. If 1 enemy is defeated, she'll be immune to damage for 1 turn. So very nice as well. But I think her chain 2 is a better chain skill. And passive 1, attack is increased by 15%, HP is increased by 10%, and damage reduction is increased by 10%, and speed is increased by 40%. So pretty nice passive skills. Let's see her speed. Yeah, very, very high. So yeah, very nice. Passive 2, when attacking with a chain 3 skill with a 30% probability deals 500% damage to one enemy with the highest attack. Okay, so it sounds nice, alright? Like, the 500% damage is definitely a lot of damage, but then you gotta consider some things. So, chain 3 skills. You have to use your chain 3, which means you have to spend 4 mana, and it only has a 30% probability to actually activate it, and her chain 3, her chain 3, sorry, yeah, her chain 3, it doesn't do that much damage. It is an AoE, but it's really nothing special. Like, I wouldn't use this too much. So, yeah, but definitely kind of, I mean, yeah, her chain 2 is definitely better in my opinion. So, yeah, this is kind of useless. If she is hit with a fatal damage, she'll survive with 1% HP and is immune to damage once. Only activates once. So, again, like, she gets that survivability, but she's only immune to damage once. It's not for one turn, it's once. Okay, so I don't think this is a good thing. Like, immune to damage, I think it should act like at least last a turn, like, because, you know, there's really no way to survive without it. So, I mean, there's really no point of having this, because a lot of things can happen in one turn. So, yeah, clan leader Sera, she's okay. I think her chain 2 is pretty nice, but everything else is more of a meh for me. So yeah, that was clan leader Sera. Alright, that was basically it for the SS tier Noblesse characters. I will be making a separate video about the S tier characters and the A tier characters in the future if you guys do want them. But yeah, personally, I don't think most of the units for Noblesse in Hero Cantare are good. I think the only actual viable character is the Unsealed Rizal. He's actually really, really good. Like, he's really good. Like, I think he's one of the best units out there, but like everything else is kind of meh for me. Well, that's just my personal opinion, but yeah, that was basically it for the SS tier units. I'll be making a separate video later on for the S tier and the A tier unit. But yeah, that was pretty much it for the video. If you guys did find this video helpful, then don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and bye-bye.